She leads conversation. We want to bring you this conversation right now. As I've been promised, today we are going to be looking at the subject creating and maximizing leadership opportunities, especially for women leaders. So thank you so much, those of you who are already joining the conversation. My name is Osulah. This is the She Leads livecast brought to you by Zion Paul Publishers in partnership with the She Leads project. Today we are going to have an amazing guest helping us to dissect the whole subject of creating and maximizing leadership opportunities, especially for women and women leaders. So if you have already joined the conversation, I would ask you to take a minute or two to be able to invite people in your network. Let your friends know that we are live. As I give a few minutes for my my guest to arrive. I think she is already in the conversation. I will just ask you, my guest, to just lift up your hands there so that I can allow you an opportunity to join the speaker's podium, so that as soon as we are ready, we will go live. Meanwhile, I will ask those of you who are already in the conversation to be able to invite your friends and people in your networks. You can share this link and let those who are in your network know that we are live and we are getting ready to discuss the whole subject of creating and maximizing leadership opportunities, especially for women leaders. We are going to have an exciting 1 hour because my guest is someone who is not only an astute woman leader, but she has the experience, she has the knowledge, she has she's a specialist in that area, and therefore she'll be speaking to us both from her personal experience and from her expertise as a specialist in that particular area. The subject of the day being maximizing, creating and maximizing leadership opportunities. Today I will be co-hosting the conversation with my colleague Electin Kunyu, who I am also waiting to be able to join the conversation. She should be here in a minute, so that we all can be able to go this way together. Meanwhile, I will ask you to share the link with your friends, allow people in your network, let them know that we are live. As I say this, I hope you have had a good day and that your Thursday has been good. Mine has moved quite fast. It was just morning a few hours ago, and then suddenly we are in the evening. I try to really maximize my time while the sun is still up there, because one thing I know and I came to learn a while ago is that when days come, they don't leave you the same way. They age you, they grow you old. So you can't joke with days. They are aging you, and we age by the day. So one of my mantras in life is that before the day does me what it wants to do with me, I should do it what I want to do with it, so that I'm able to squeeze value out of it before I let it go. Because this Thursday that you've seen today, you will never see it again. It is coming and going. So if you may want to pick this as a mantra, make sure that you squeeze value out of your days before they squeeze age out of you. That's quite interesting. But today's topic is creating and maximizing leadership opportunities, especially for women and women leaders. The insights that are going to be shared with us today are universal and applicable. I guess anybody who is joining the conversation, whether you are male or female, you should be able to glean something out of this and apply it in your leadership space. I am speaking this as I allow you a minute or two to be able to invite your friends. I can see people are joining in fast and furious, and this is quite amazing. And it has to be fast and furious because today's guest is like no other. When we were planning for this, she got excited about it, and she was ready for it. She was ready for it even before this day arrived. And she was here quite early because she wants to maximize on the time that we have here today. So in a short while, we are going to be starting. As I said earlier, the conversation is brought to you courtesy of Zion Paul Publishers in partnership with the She Leads project. She Leads, as the name suggests, is a project about women and women in leadership. And the purpose of this project is to create a platform where we can be able to amplify the voices of the women leaders, especially the African woman, and be able to showcase the exceptional work that she is doing and help her to position herself and to deliver value. I believe in value, and I believe that all of us have the capability of delivering value. All we need to do is to recognize who is capable of what, give them the necessary support, and celebrate what they are able to do. And as we do that, we must be conscious and intentional about growing, stretching, and becoming bigger and better. I believe that each one of us has a better version, and I am so much interested in the value that comes out of that. So this project has the multiple facets to it. There is a facet that covers the conversation bit of it, and this audio cast and live cast that we are having today is one of those. We have other forms of conversations that we are engaging in, workshops and conferences and roundtable conversations and technical working groups, etc. As I say this, I am just reminded of a conference that we are planning, the She Lead Summit, coming up next year in the month of March, between 6th and 8th March 2024 here in Nairobi. It's going to be a huge conference that will bring all these women that we've been featuring here together in one place for a powerful 3-day meeting that will allow all of us an opportunity to learn from each other, to discuss issues, and to chart the way forward, even as we seek to improve the numbers when it comes to inclusivity or inclusion of women in not only leadership, but in opportunities that generate values for themselves and the community at large. So as I say this, I can see a lot more people joining the conversation. Thank you so very much, those of you who've joined the conversation. We value you. We value the fact that you're sparing time to be part of this conversation. If you know anybody else who should be part of this talk, let them know that we are live now. This conversation today is hosted by myself, assisted by my co-host, the amazing and capable Electing Kunyu. I will give her a minute to say hi to us and to welcome us, and then we will take it up from there as we bring the guest on board. Electing, if you can hear me, I want to hand over the microphone to you so you can say hello to the audiences, and then we will officially begin the conversation. Thank you so very much, and good evening to all of you.
Hello, thank you so much, Joseph, for this opportunity. I just want to say thank you for all of you guys who are joining us for this amazing conversation. Hope you're going to get yourselves one or two insights from our able guest, Madam Winnie Osulah. Thank you so much for joining. I'll be co-hosting this conversation with Osulah Dido. My name is Electric Kuni. Let's have a wonderful conversation. Thank you.
Well, thank you so very much, Electing. Thank you for being part of this and for your contribution in making sure that this happened. Today's guest is Winnie Osulah, as has been suggested already. And Winnie Osulah is a seasoned gender specialist who prides herself in providing technical leadership in gender mainstreaming and integration, both at the institutional and program levels. She holds extensive experience and competence in gender issues with a holistic approach to cross-sectoral development. Her passion in women's empowerment towards achieving gender equality is that of one woman at a time. Beyond that, she is a co-author of a book called She Leads, whose launch is coming up on the 29th of this month at the Trademark Hotel in Village Market here in Nairobi. So without much ado, allow me to bring Winnie to the podium to say hello to us as we begin the conversation. Over to you, Winnie.
Wow, what an introduction. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
I hope so. Thank you. Yeah, like I said earlier, also my voice is a bit cracky. I've suffered some flu
I think this is how I was welcomed into Tanzania. I'm in Dar es Salaam at the moment for a summit.
Mm-hmm.
And I was excited to join this conversation today. However much I was not feeling so well.
Mm.
And then time is also not on our side. So it meant that, we make do with what we have.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for having me. I'm just saying that I'm excited to be here. And thank you to the guests that I'm seeing online. Thank you, Clarice. Thank you, Dr. Julian. And the rest that I may not know personally. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much. I believe they all have heard you. It's good to have Dr. Julian here. I met Dr. Julian some time back. We had an amazing conversation. Then we have never seen each other again. I'm so glad that he is part of the conversation today. So everybody of you who is here, thank you so very much. As has been said, we hope we are going to get value out of this. So the topic of the day today is creating and maximizing leadership opportunities. So Winnie, I want to understand, what is your understanding of leadership? How do you define leadership? How do you see it? How do you measure it, even before you go into the whole issue about creating and maximizing leadership opportunities?
Yeah, for me, leadership simply means one being able to recognize their visibility. Because it is in leadership that one is able to be seen, is able to be heard. And to add on to that, leadership also means what's the level of urgency one has within themselves. So because without this, you cannot amass, or you cannot really have a creative way of being in the leadership space. So one of them is that you have to be able to define what is your visibility. Which spaces do you want to be seen in? Which spaces do we want to be heard in? What's your level of urgency? Are you able to speak up? Do you have a voice? Do you have a platform for that voice? So these are the kind of things that leadership means for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, that's so good. I like the fact that you are giving it a personal touch. A lot of us have understood leadership differently based on who we are listening to or which philosophy we subscribe to. But what I hear you say is about visibility, platform, voice, and of course, that ties together to the kind of impact that somebody is trying to create as a leader. So when it comes to leadership, there is this whole thing we are calling leadership opportunity. So what is this, Winnie?
Yeah, we are always talking about opportunities when it comes to leadership, and it's because there's a scarcity of leadership in some sectors,
Mm-hmm.
Of the population. And opportunities simply mean that where are these spaces where one can take up a leadership position, and why? And sometimes we ask ourselves, why are they not accessing it? And that is when it becomes an opportunity, because in the first place, to say it seems not to be there in the first place, or it is not easy to access.
Mm-hmm.
So what is this? What is this? I even want to use the same word. So what is this thing that we are lacking, and where can we find it? So in terms of leadership, where are these spaces where we can actually access those leadership positions? Yeah, so those are the opportunities I'm talking about. What are these platforms that can help us create that space that I can actually go into as a person, as an individual, to, kind of practice my leadership skills, for instance. Yeah.
Talking of scarcity, you remind me what was said here on Monday by Dr. Peggy Elliott when she talked about a lot of leadership we see around is not genuine. There's a lot of fakeness in leadership, and I begin to see from just what you've just said what she meant. When there is scarcity, that means most of what we see is not it. So that certain aspects of it are not available the way we want it to available. And scarcity can mean many things. There could be scarcity of leadership competence, scarcity of authentic leadership, scarcity of integrity. And when I talk about integrity, we know what we are talking about, especially in Africa, in our country. all the time, one of the measures of good leadership we talk about here is authenticity. So it's quite interesting to hear you put the words together to come up with the phrase scarcity of leadership. Wow. So what do you make of the term creating and maximizing leadership opportunities? What is it that you understand by this?
Yeah, so when we talk about creating and maximizing, those leadership opportunities, from my understanding and even from my experience, it's about recognizing those leadership disparities. Because when you want to create something, it means in the first place it's either not existing or it is scarce. So for me, it's about recognizing those leadership disparities. And when I talk about disparities, I'm talking about men and women, the male and female gender.
Yes.
So there are disparities of leadership issues around there. But beyond recognizing that, we also need to identify what are those opportunities that do exist. And these opportunities should come in terms of growth and in terms of development. And then beyond that, we need to look at what can make the person who is not accessing these opportunities, and for instance, for me in this case, it's the women. What can make the women aware of of their potential to start with? Because you also have to look inward. What are the potentials I have? So here is a case that we have recognized what the disparities are. We have identified what opportunities are in terms of growth and development. And now we have to look at, are we aware of this potential that we have for us to even exploit the opportunities that you're looking for that we've already identified. But remember, in this space now, we also have to look at there's the culture of belonging. Are you welcome in that place? Yeah, and how do you maneuver it? So that is what I'm talking about, growth and development. Because without that being packaged within the opportunity that is identified, then as a person who is not able to access that leadership at that moment, you're not able, you don't have the capacity to exploit it. Yeah, so when we're talking about creating and maximizing, we need to look at those aspects. Yeah.
Wow, that's quite profound. And while you're talking, I'm just wondering why should we rally ourselves so much around leadership? I mean, why leadership? I mean, why don't we create and maximize other things?
Good and interesting question. You know that we are social beings, and there are a lot of decisions that are made on how we interact, how we pursue things, how we pursue our aspirations, and all that. But where are these decisions made? For one to be in a position of decision making, you need to belong to a certain, I would call it, some level of status. Unfortunately, our socialization process has created some disparities. And therefore, I am not able to enjoy my freedom in a space where things are decided for me. And I can only enjoy being in that space when my voice is being heard. And where can my voice be heard, especially as a woman? My voice will be heard when I'm sitting at the decision-making table. And that gives me the heart of a leader. So before I can access a leadership position, it means I cannot also be in a space where I'm making those decisions that impact my life and the lives of others. So yes, it's important that, we need to consider those leadership issues, because that is where the decisions are made. Yeah, and these decisions impact us in one way or another.
Wow, there are many things you're saying here. First of all, you use the phrase welcome in leadership. The impression that it creates in my mind is that there are certain people that are owning those spaces, and there's certain others that are not in that spaces, and the impression of permission to enter into or function in those spaces. You also talk about position of decision making. That means there are other positions, and you also said enjoying your freedom where things are not decided. So I'm mentioning all these things because there is something that was said here on Monday by Dr. Peggy. She said that traditionally women were not permitted to express themselves, and I agreed with her in so many ways. But now we are coming to a place where that reality is being redefined. We are busting that bubble and creating a new reality, and that connects very well with what you are saying. Disparities, opportunities, welcome into leadership, and all these things. Why do you think it's necessary for us to bust this bubble and level the ground, redefine how leadership should be understood and practiced?
Yeah, thanks again for that. Like I said earlier, we are social beings and we're being governed by certain social structures. But beyond that, we live in a system, and a system is guarded or governed by certain bylaws or legal frameworks. And what we know is that we are not living in a world that is fair. Otherwise, we would not be talking about equality or equity. And therefore, the enabling environment is not quite there when it comes to issues of leadership. And we are, from our social upbringing or the socialization process, what we experience, especially in the African society, where we are coming from mostly patriarchal systems. And this means that certain powers are already bestowed in one gender. And this gender is the male gender.
Yes.
And therefore, like you're making reference to the previous speaker, women were not allowed to express themselves because they were put in a certain status. And even today, you hear people making comments like the woman's place is in the kitchen. And I wonder what some of us are doing out in the corporate area and international development spaces that we are performing.
Yes.
Yeah, so that is why we need to bust that bubble, because we have proven ourselves. Some of us are a living proof that yes, we can be very good in the kitchen, but we're also very good in the boardrooms. We only need the space. We only need the space to practice that. And therefore, it's important to demystify those social cultural stereotypes that tag women as the weaker sex, tag them as people who are not supposed to be leading but to be led. So we need to demystify those, because I think even some of the research is already showing us that organizations that have had women in leadership are enjoying some benefits in terms of high performance, in terms of good returns. And even today, we're still struggling with the issue of what is the business or what is the return on investment in talking equality issues. And research is showing us that it's happening. So we still need to bust that bubble because of the beliefs that have been inculcated in us, that have been proven to be things that are only stereotypes and not actual. And then we also need to bust this bubble because leadership is not the boys' club anymore. We are penetrating the space, and we need to pull others, and especially the rural women who might not have the kind of networks that some of us have. Yeah, so those are some of the reasons that we need to look at, leveling the ground. And as a country, if I talk about Kenya, my country, I think we have really beautiful laws, nice policies on gender equality and all that. But the implementation is an issue, which means we do not have the buy-in, or we are simply not being genuine to ourselves. But we have done a lot as far as the legal frameworks are concerned. We have signed a lot of treaties that promote gender equality, but it's still a journey that we are walking. Yeah, thank you.
Wow, that's quite deep. So when you talk about this, when you talk about creating and maximizing, in my mind, I am getting the picture of a force against a force, so that unless somebody creates and maximizes, then the negative forces will push them to silence and oblivion. You have begun to mention some of those challenges that could be bedeviling this whole situation. Talked about beliefs, talked about culture, talked about poor implementation and all those things. I wonder what other elements you can pick from all this that would constitute the problem, because we seem to be coming from the position of trying to push the forces back, which the forces of the problem. What do you think makes the problem?
Yeah, to some extent, you must have heard this phrase that women are their own enemies. And this is emanating originating again from how we are socialized.
Mm-hmm.
We are socialized to believe that our place is in the kitchen. We are socialized to believe that some of the, some of the achievement, how do I call it? Some of the things that show your level of achievement is probably getting married. I'm not saying that getting married is wrong, but we are being forced into a box. Women are coming up and being forced into a certain box, and getting out of that box is an issue. And that is when we try to get out of that box.
Yes.
We are getting that kind of a pushback. And when you started to recognize what your rights are and you try to practice them, then you get that pushback. But this pushback also makes women come to a place where they cannot fully express themselves. They feel like they're not confident enough. During some training we had, something was mentioned about women not being genuine sometimes, because someone asked me if an institution can recognize gender in issues within themselves and practice it on the long term. And I told them it starts from the point that you're doing your recruitment. Because when you're doing your recruitment, they were asking me, why is it that when you're doing your recruitment, when an organization is walking the journey of gender integration and they're doing recruitment and they're talking about female applicants are encouraged to apply, things like that. And I'm telling them that has to happen because we have put ourselves in a place where we feel we're not competent. And someone mentioned during that session that when a man sees a position and it has 10 desired qualities or qualifications, and he only has 1 or 2, he will apply. When a woman has 6 and misses the other 4, she feels incompetent and doesn't apply. So sometimes we are shooting, women should change themselves. And that is why I say it starts by you, the person. What is your visibility goal? What is this thing that you want? Because before you revisit your own inspiration, then it becomes difficult. So sometimes feeling like you don't belong, feeling like you're not worthy, feeling like you're not having the right qualifications, feeling like you're not fitting, feeling like you're not welcome, all those kind of feelings kind of pushes someone back and not, really going forward for what they believe, for what they've not fully believed in. Yeah, so those are some of the things that can happen, despite issues around, the culture, the framework, the environment that we are in. Yeah. Thank you.
Wow. That's so profound. I wonder if there's anybody in the audience who has a question or a comment they want to respond to what we are hearing today. Remember, we are talking to Winnie Osulah, and we are trying to understand this whole concept, this whole idea of creating and maximizing leadership opportunities, especially for women and women leaders. So if you have a question or a comment you want to share or say, please lift up your hand. I should be able to give you an opportunity. Before I proceed, I will allow my co-host, I guess she could be having a number of questions from her end, to be able to ask as we wait for those who are in the audience to be able to raise their questions, if there is going to be any. Over to you, Electin.
Thank you so much, Doso. I've been able to hear our speaker saying that there is need for creating and maximizing this leadership position, this leadership opportunity. So once these opportunities have been created and have been maximized, how are we going to, or how are they going to be retained and developed once these positions have already been created? How best do you think these positions are going also to be retained and developed for these people who these opportunities have been created for?
Thank you so much, Electin, for that question. And this takes me to part of the contribution I made to the book that we are soon launching. And when you talk about we have created, first we have recognized that there's a leadership disparity, and then we have identified those opportunities. And now we are looking at how do we sustain, how do we sustain that momentum? One of the things I've seen work is once that opportunity is created, then look at the opportunity opportunities for mentorship and opportunities for coaching. Because when these women, especially the rural women, when they enter these leadership positions, there's still a lot more to be, to be given to them in terms of capacity building. So that is why I talked about that when we identify opportunities, let us look at opportunities for growth and development. It's not just about saying we have this position in the board and we are thinking that you as a woman can take it up. But what are the support mechanisms that are there? And this brings me back to the systemic changes systemic and structural changes that need to happen. If the environment is not enabling enough, then it means we're making are also not going anywhere. They're not taking us anywhere. So we need to make sure that the environment is suitable for supporting that kind of a growth mechanism. An enabling environment is one where those support mechanisms are available, be it in terms of training, be it in terms of coaching, be it in terms of mentorship, just making sure that the necessary skills development that a leader needs is provided and is actually attained. So you make it available and utilizable for that person that is targeted. Otherwise, we might create them, people join them, but they drop off. And what I see is it's not about handing over a position to somebody. Unfortunately, I see that in our political system. We have women reps, and sometimes I ask myself, why can't the government allow an enabling environment so that we compete fairly and square? Then I can say, I deserve that. But you see, when something is handed over to you, at the same time, it doesn't have that value as it would have if you actually earned it. So I want to say that leadership is earned, but as I earn it, am I getting the necessary support that I need to sustain that momentum? How many can I pull with me on that journey? Because to sustain it, it's not just about me, but it's about us. How many others can come with me? Yeah. Back to you, Electric.
Okay, thank you so much. Also, you've mentioned that there's this thing that already is within us, that we believe that women, we are our own enemies, yeah? And while you are explaining, I kind of also want to understand, is there a way that you can do, because like you're also trying to explain earlier on this other question that I just asked, you say that also, why can the government create a way for us to be able to compete in these positions that you've already been given? I mean, what do you think that women can do? Not just wait for the government to get that opportunity. Yes, the opportunity has been created, the two-thirds gender rule and what have you. The opportunities are there. Why don't we just come up with a position? Is there a way we can come up with without that strategy where we can be able to compete amongst ourselves so that we can be able to acquire this position that already has been presented for us? And also, there's also someone who said that to be able to achieve this, we take opportunities to create allies. Yeah, to create allies in men, because we believe also, as much as we are our own enemies, at some extent we are also our own cheerleaders. Yeah, we can create cheerleaders amongst ourselves as women, and also we can create cheerleaders from men, because we believe also that those men who are also striving to see women succeed in this leadership position. Is there a way or rather a strategy that this also can be achieved? And to be able to do away with this issue of women being our own enemies.
Yeah, thanks again, Elected. Actually, that's a saying, quote unquote, women are their own enemies, but I think we are our cheerleaders at the same time. And so when you ask what we do instead of waiting for the government, remember, as a country, Kenya, we are talking about the gender rule. And what does this say? 2/3 of either gender. But more often, you will find that it's only 1/3 of the female gender that is represented anywhere. So that in itself is a problem. And these are the lawmakers. That in itself is a problem. And how many of our lawmakers are male? How many of them are female? So again, it's a game changer at that level, because if the larger number are male and the females are fewer, when it comes to voting, whose votes matter? Because it's about the voices. So that one becomes a challenge if it is not well implemented. And like I said when I started, that we have really good legal frameworks, but the implementation has been a challenge. So until we get committed, until we get accountable as a people, as a government, to make sure that the beautiful laws that we make are actually being implemented, and we're seeing, their outcomes at the end of the day, then we're not going to move far. You also talked about how do we work with men as allies. In the development sector, we call it male engagement. We know that our society is a patriarchal one, and therefore it means that they are still the custodian of culture. They are holding onto it tightly because it gives them a lot of privilege. So for us to break that ceiling, that glass ceiling, which we are still struggling to break, it means that we have to engage the custodian of that culture. And they need to understand that we are not getting into these spaces as women to challenge their leadership, but to co-lead with them. We are getting into a partnership. So until we get that understanding, it might be a bit of an issue. And that takes me to why I am focusing on this leadership from a cooperative perspective. It is because there is voice in numbers, collective action, and women are very good at that. So through this cooperative movement, there's a platform where women can now start voicing their needs, start voicing their aspirations, and start taking leadership even from women-only cooperatives before they even get into cooperatives that are, mixed gender. Yeah, so that is what I can say, because it's about engaging that person who is holding the key to your freedom, so to speak. And engaging them in a positive way. We can actually leverage on what we call positive masculinities, because the positive masculinities are the ones that recognize that even women can do certain things, and men and women can work in collaboration, as opposed to negative masculinities that put a lot of privilege on men and deny women certain opportunities. Yeah, so that's how I would express, my thoughts on the questions you've just asked.
Thank you so much. I've loved that part where you said positive masculinity. Yeah, thank you so much. So I'll just take it back to Doso so that you can ask any other questions you got when I still see, as we also wait for our listeners. In case you have any questions, just raise your hand, then we can give you an opportunity to also get your questions answered. Thank you.
Well, thank you so very much, Electine. Quite insightful questions and responses over here. Remember, we are talking to Winnie Osulah on creating and maximizing leadership opportunities, especially for women and women in leadership. If you have a question or a comment, I want to encourage you to just lift your hand. And if you don't want to ask the question yourself, you can actually send the questions either to me or to Electine, and we will ask them on your behalf. I can see a hand raised here. I am going to allow you to ask your question. Over to you, Joan.
Thank you so much, host. I just have a comment. I'm so excited and happy that this is a conversation that is so different from what we used to hear in the past, and not so many years ago. Like 5 years ago, we would hear conversations that would talk about women in leadership. They would be about emancipation and how to get women on top and how to, lift women and all that. But now I'm just so happy that we are having conversations where women are no longer at the bottom. They are also at the top. They are out there breaking glass ceilings. They are out there, we are claiming our seats on the table. We can now talk in spaces where men were originally the only ones speaking, and our only challenge is how to sustain ourselves in those positions. And like our guest has spoken, that there is pressure for us to stay. There is pressure for us to that is pushing us back when we try to get out, to break the ceilings, and then there's this pressure pulling us back. I'm grateful that we are no longer at the bottom. We are now talking about equality, and for me it's just a comment. It's something that has made me happy, and yeah, we are grateful for Dr. Our guest has called it positive masculinity. We are grateful for that. It's now a subject that we can talk about. So I'm just grateful for that, and to see people like Dr. Julian coming in the conversation, it's really amazing for me. Yeah, that's all I had to say. It's just a comment.
Wow, thank you so very much, Joan, for your comment. We have heard you loud and clear. Could there be anyone else here with a question or a comment? Feel free to lift your hand, and we will be given an opportunity to ask your question, or else you can send your question to myself or Electin, and then we'll ask it for you. While you were talking, Winnie, there are certain things that you said, and I like the fact that you said it. I've always questioned the 2/3 gender rule, and this is how I summarize my feeling around it. It feels like whoever came up with this idea, the spirit of this was more of a humanitarian approach to things. They felt like, whoa, it looks bad. We are only men around the table. We need to be merciful to the female people and allow them a third of something. And actually, you are right in saying that the 2/3 gender rule, the 2/3 of that whole situation is actually the men, because they were the givers of the position. So of course, when you're a giver of something, you want to make sure that what you're retaining for yourself is bigger and juicier and sweeter. And then there are third, because those fractions can be explained, and not just explained from my perspective, but research has actually proven, because when I did a check a few days ago, the best I have seen female representation is a 38%. That's the best I have seen. Most of that representation plays anywhere between 10% to 20%, but in some other fields is actually less than 3%. So the best I have seen is a 38%. A few days ago, I was talking to a woman leader from some organization, and she was trying to explain to me the kind of effort they are putting and the interventions they're putting in their organization to make sure that women are encouraged to take on leadership opportunities and stuff like that. Then I asked her, what numbers are you targeting? And that's when she told me something that really disappointed me. She told me that we are trying to boost the numbers to around 30%. So I asked her, why 30? Is this not a subtle way of talking about the flip side of the 2/3 of the gender rule? Because she's working so hard to achieve a third. So I asked her, why are you not even imagining a 50% or 100%, and she could not give me an answer. So that when you talk about the 2/3 gender rule being somehow biased in a way, it's a very subtle way of saying it, because when they say 2/3 of any gender, yet we know that the way the dynamics play, they would naturally distribute a certain group of people in this end of the fraction, and another group in another end of the fraction. And as I say this, I am not against men in any way, but I'm just feeling there is need for us to begin to tap into the resourcefulness of the women that are found in our midst, so that even as we structure the policy landscape and the legal landscape, we are intentional to make sure that the space is open up for people who are capable and willing, so that even if we have more than that, we should not feel like it is a problem. Again, you talked about the problems. The last question I asked you before I started talking right now was what do you make of the problem? What do you think constitutes the problem? And you talked about a number of things, and I was taking some notes here. I want us to revisit them according to the way I have noted them down, because I was giving them some name. Some of those names are universal; they are known to all of us. Some of them I'm just creating them right now as we speak. So you talked about the imposter syndrome, and today there's a lot of talk around the imposter syndrome. a lot of imposter syndrome is actually affecting the women. I know there are some men that also suffer imposter syndrome, but if you look at the numbers, we seem to have more women under the attack of this syndrome compared to men. So I want to pick your thoughts about imposter. I know you've mentioned a little something about this, about imposter women and creating and maximizing leadership opportunities. And I want us to tie this so well so that we see if we can come up with suggestions of how to unchain ourselves from these things. Because when it comes to creating is something that you can drive as an individual. But when you are suffering from imposter, then you cannot drive that thing, even if you have the power, the creativity, the opportunity. There is just this force that keeps holding you back. So let me hear your thoughts about imposter women and creating and maximizing leadership opportunities. So it's just not just imposter on anything else, but imposter on those two particular elements. And then I will go to the next, because I think I've written down about 7 different things that I think I would want to hear your thoughts about.
Thank you so much. And you said 7. Damn, I'm really going to talk tonight. So when you talk about the imposter syndrome, this is all about those biases that women feel, especially in the leadership space. And in this case, there are those prejudices. And what is happening is that, I'll go back to our socialization. We have been socialized that there are positions for men and there are positions for women. And this is all about gender roles and responsibilities that we are given, the practices that we do, the kind of the kind of social structures that we come from. And therefore, it is inculcated in us that we belong somewhere, and it's not on the table where decisions are being made. So you come from such a background, and then you find yourself that you're climbing up the ladder, you're getting the corner office. Chances are that your social cultural beliefs will still creep in. And if we do not break these barriers, because you're not working in this environment alone, you're working with other people. So we get influenced. And if your influences, the people who influence you are still the male and could probably be making, some connotations, the kind of efforts you've made, then at some point it gets to you and you start doubting yourself. But the only way to get out of that box is to make sure that you're in a space where you're empowered. Because before you're empowered, you cannot have a voice, you cannot make decisions, and you have no self-agency. So to get out of that box, there is need for empowerment. But how do you empower a woman who needs to, enter the leadership space and also stay there? So there are a lot of questions that we can keep on asking ourselves, because whatever we say, there's probably something else that we need to do. So when I talk about empowerment, it means that at that level, look at all the metrics of empowerment and make sure that women are attaining self-agency, they're having a voice, they're able to make a choice, and of course the ultimate decision making over what path they want to take. So if we can demystify our social cultural structures and come to a point where we are seeing the benefits of having women in leadership, we are appreciating, even before we start seeing the benefits, but we are appreciating that they have something to contribute. Then in that context, we can get somewhere. Other than answering your questions, I wanted to just take you back a little bit. You talked about the 30% issue. And I think we shouldn't look at it as a blanket or as someone looking for just 30%. It's all about 30% of what? It's all about 30% of what? Because you'll find that that's a person who does not even have a female leader or a female employee anywhere. So talking about 30% is not a walk in the park. It's not a walk in the park. Yeah, so I just wanted to reiterate on that as well. Yeah, but when it comes to those issues of imposter syndrome, I think that would basically be my contribution. To get out of that box, we have to look at the social-cultural issues that are surrounding us. Who are our influences? I usually love referring to the ecological framework. You know, as a person, you have your own person to deal with as an individual. You have your own aspirations, but you have to deal with your own issues. You have to deal with your own beliefs. But after you're dealing with your own beliefs, you belong to a certain household, and there are influences here. How can your influences support your aspirations? Beyond your influences at the household level, you have these ones at the community level. They are reinforcing those influences that you have within your household. And then you have the larger environment where policies and the government and all other people exist in. And to some extent now, at the policy level, you realize that some policies are now clashing with the social cultural beliefs at the household and at the community. And it is this still one person at the center whom we are trying to influence. So I think it's a little bit complicated, but it's something that can be done. I mean, that is why I say one woman at a time. Yeah.
I love that. Now let's move to the next syndrome. I believe a lot of leadership, if not all of it, is about the right mindset, the right skill set, and then building the right environment that can be able to have supportive structures and culture and stuff like that. So let's talk about the incompetence syndrome, where it becomes impossible to do it because when opportunities are already given, and now we move from everything else to productivity, and now it is discovered that, you know what, the agitation was just about balancing the gender, but now somebody cannot be able to deliver because it's more about functionality and productivity. Leadership spaces, in my opinion, are about functionality and productivity. So I wanted to speak about the issue of competence, incompetence, and the whole idea of the need for capacity building.
Again, for that, if you look at the incompetence issues, especially the syndrome around incompetence, it is also different from the imposter syndrome, because these are things that are inculcated into us as individuals. You're made to believe that you're not good enough. The playing ground is already not even. So that makes you feel that you're incompetent as much as you feel you have the skills. So that is why there's a lot of support mechanism that needs to be put in place for this rural woman who does not have a network, who does not have access to information, who does not have, someone to call a mentor or a coach. So when that support mechanism is not there, it becomes very difficult. But the incompetencies are around the kind of qualifications that you're asking for.
Yes.
If you have to be admitted into your board and you're asking for competencies that I probably don't have, and like the example I gave earlier, a woman who has six qualifications out of the 10 feels like she's not good enough because she believes that she must have the 10, and that is what has been inculcated in her. And the man on the other side has only 2, and he says, well, I'm going for this. So we are also not brought up in a scenario to make us versatile. Yeah, so we are not aggressive, because being aggressive is, you're supposed to be a man. You've had comments like, whoa, this one is talking with authority like a man, because you're a lady, oozing some authority. And on the other hand, you find a mother, me being one of the mothers, and you're telling your child, a male child, why are you weak like a girl? I mean, what are we saying here? Are we supposed to be getting compliments because we are behaving like men? And men are supposed to be, made to feel inferior because they're behaving like women? Yeah, so it is all about our socialization process. You look at the kind of toys we buy for our children. You're buying for your baby girl a doll and cooking items. Do you expect expect her to drive a car? Do you expect her to fly an aeroplane? She doesn't have that aspiration because you've already boxed their minds into the things that they're supposed to do. So accessing leadership starts from how am I socialized? Am I having this free space? Is someone able to hear? Do I have a voice? And are people hearing me? Are they giving me a listening ear?
Yes.
Yeah, so without those, women will continue feeling incompetent because we've been made to feel that unless we are given, unless someone holds our hand, but it all comes down to give me a level ground, allow me to compete fairly and squarely. And that is where we have things like the affirmative action. Why do we have that? Because we say our girls are not, especially in education, how do we progress from primary to secondary? You start seeing some dropouts. You get to tertiary level and the number goes down. And so we come up with a nice way of leveraging the ground and we say affirmative action. But affirmative action is like, someone gave me an interesting example of, you're not treating the issues that the root causes. It's like someone has an injury and you're putting a plaster on it. You're not attending to the wound. And that is what is happening to us. And that is why we're feeling that women are still feeling like, they're not competent enough to take on some of those things. So until you start addressing the social cultural issues that is preventing this young girl from accessing education, stop making her cook dinner for everybody in the evening when they've all come from school. Stop making her go for firewood and water when the brother is doing their homework. So until those are changed, we would not need things like affirmative action. We wouldn't need them if we're in the ideal kind of environment that you're trying to agitate for. So those are some of the issues that we bring about the feeling of incompetence.
Wow, so many people are loving what you're saying. I can see love emojis flying here. Everybody's loving it. I see there's a question here. I don't know whether Sohna is asking a question. I hope I'm pronouncing her name well. If you are raising your hand to ask a question, please, I'm giving the microphone to you. Please go ahead and ask it.
Thanks, Winnie, for this great presentation and the debate. Just picking from what you said, these sociocultural barriers to competencies and all about authority, which are barriers to women leadership. I'm just asking you a question about the workspace, the workplace, because listening to you, I'm seeing that all that compliment women are receiving in the rural area from the sociocultural aspects. I'm just thinking about the workplace and the feedbacks women are receiving from the working team, from the leadership, from the management. How can it work to how can it impact the confidence and the competencies of women, and how can we find the sweet for effective feedback to improve women competencies and confidence in the workspace?
Thank you, Sohna, and thank you for not asking the question in French. I think I kind of focused on the role of woman because of the kind of contribution I made to the book. But even in the workspace, that is still happening, and it is happening because most of the corporate organizations still look at leadership, or maybe they don't look at it. It could be unintentional, and it still looks like what we call the boys' club. And this is because, as a woman, and even the women on this call, in our working career, and if you're still raising a family, there's a time that you're away for even 6 months from your job because you've had a little one. And the male colleagues are continuing to work. They still Maybe their wives are having children, but they only take 2 weeks of paternity leave. And here you are taking your probably some 6 months, 4 to 6 months. So that means that all the time when you're still bringing up your family, it means that you're going to miss out on a lot of opportunities because you are not consistent in your in gaining your experience. Because when you come back after 6 months, don't expect a promotion. You still need to catch up from where you left and start continuing. So that's something that happens, especially for young women who are still, raising their families. And remember, a woman, whether rural or urban, you still have triple roles. You have your role as a mother, which is the reproductive role. You have your role, again, the community role, because you are in several groupings where the community look at you as a caregiver and everything. And then you have your productive role, the income generating one. So juggling these 3 roles, at what point do you have the opportunity to go and further your career, to go and study a new course, to go and attend a conference and have new learnings? So these are challenges that women deal with. And until that time that our organizations, especially in our workspaces, can start realizing and accepting this, we are still going to have that problem. Yeah, but to look at it deeply, and I would still refer to women who are still raising young families. We've had opportunities where we've had recommendations about, having, what do we call them again? The mother units, where if you're still breastfeeding, then probably you'll have an opportunity to go and express your milk. But I mean, I'm away from my child the whole day. It's just the milk that I'm able to express. Can we have hybrid kind of working arrangement where I can still work from home, bond with my young child, and still deliver? Can I have flexibility? So until corporates start doing such things, it can become a big problem. Looking into that a little more deeply, the corporate made up of mostly, they are for profit, but they'll be looking at your time. How much time are you investing vis-a-vis what you're reaping in terms of your pay, in terms of the benefits you're getting, and all that? So it's a tightrope to walk, but I believe with the implementation of the right policies, which most organizations have adopted, something can really happen. So I don't know if I've addressed, it's like she dropped off or something. Oh, you're here. I don't know if I've addressed your concern, but you are a fellow gender expert. I think we can work together on this. Thank you.
Well, thank you so very much, Winnie. I am assuming that she has been sufficiently answered, and therefore I will allow somebody else to ask a question. Sharon, you're lifting up your hand. Please grab the microphone and ask your question. Over to you, Sharon. I'm trying to admit Sharon to ask her question, but since she is not, it is not going through. Sharon, I'm trying to admit you to ask your question, but looks like it's not going through. All right. As I keep trying to admit her to ask the question, I'm wondering if there's anybody else here with a comment or a question. Remember, we are talking to Winnie Osulah, and the subject of discussion today is creating and maximizing leadership opportunities, especially for women leaders and women in leadership. Sharon Anyango, I think you can now ask your question.
Thank you so much. Hi, Winnie. My question is in regards to, I think it was earlier this year, there was this survey that was released stating that equity, especially the female staff, they're paid 52% below men in the same positions. So this was surprising because Equity Bank is a big corporate giant, and also it has offices like outside Kenya. So Winnie, perhaps in your opinion, like this is equity, but I'm sure that maybe there are also other corporates who are also paying like the female staff less in the same position as compared to men. So in your opinion, like how can the corporates like reduce the gender gap that is happening? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sharon, for that question. Especially on the Equity Bank issue, I think there was a lot of uproar from a number of us online asking why such a thing would happen. And if you remember, in the same context, which is it the umbrella body for the circles in Kenya that also unveiled their board, and they were so excited talking about it everywhere in the media. And we look at that board and there's no woman on it, and we are asking ourselves, these people should be ashamed of even publishing such a thing. But again, when we come back to the issue of equity as the example, when that happens, what went through my mind is some employers imagine that if they increase the number of women in an institution, then they have done, some equity work, quote unquote equity, the gender equity issues. So you realize that the job that one man is doing is being subdivided into three or four positions and given to women, and the money that one person is supposed to get is now divided for all these 3 or 4 women. That is not equity, because if I'm going to do the same position, then trust me with the position. And again, this comes with the issue of, are women competent enough to take certain positions? So probably people feel that, and this is just my assumption, that it's probably they don't feel that the women are competent enough. And remember, we went to the same universities, we sat in the same lecture halls, but when it comes to reward, it's a totally different ballgame. And don't forget that in these same corporates, who are the leaders? So who are the people with the privilege of deciding who gets what? So what I would advise in such a scenario, what needs to happen is, I know many institutions do pay equity surveys just to try and understand what are the different institutions and organizations paying a particular level of staff on the different cadres. The issue is on the implementation. Once these surveys are done, can they just be implemented as is instead of manipulating what goes to whom? So another thing is, do they have the internal structures to look into that? Because you cannot make hold yourself accountable as an institution if your structures are not in place in a way that they support those kind of changes. So you'll find that an institution like Equity Bank does not have a gender policy, does not have anything on inclusion, and does not have a strategy on how to do that. And their strategy could be about employ more women, to attract more women customers, and the likes. So that does not speak to issues about achieving the gender equality goals. So I would say that we need to have internal structures first, because probably they haven't seen the return on business for having qualified women earn as much as the men that are on board. So it's about the internal structures. They need to work on the internal structures first, and they can now have a basis of holding themselves accountable, and probably having some external auditors. Because when you have an external eye, then you can learn from it. But again, this external eye can only come if the institution is receptive. So it's about the institution having a different perspective of, changing their minds. They must get a mind shift before they can implement those changes. Yeah. I hope that's satisfactory, Sharon.
Well, thank you so very much. That was a question from Sharon. She says she's satisfied. Thank you so very much. Anybody else with a question? Feel free to raise your hand. I will give you an opportunity to ask it. I'll go back to the 7 issues that I had pointed out here. Talked about 2. I'm going to be looking at these while I wait for questions or comments from any of you. If any of you have a question, please let me know, or let my co-host Electin Kunyu know about it so we can give you an opportunity to ask the question. So you talked about the imposter syndrome, the incompetence syndrome. Now I want you to give your thoughts about the suppression syndrome. The suppression syndrome, this is how I explain it, that sometimes women have these urges to take on leadership opportunities. There's this burst of urge inside of you, and it tells you, yeah, you can go for that, and then that is suppressed the same way emotions are suppressed, etc. On Monday, Dr. Peggy quoted a study that was done, I think, in the US, that is now showing that more and more women are suffering from heart attack. Corporate women are suffering from heart attack because of suppressing their emotions. And when she said that, I knew what she was talking about. There's a lot of suppression. I know a bit of it comes from conditioning and all these things that have been told, the stereotypes that have been sold to people and stuff like that. But suppression is real. It's happening. And a bit of what we are talking about today, creating and maximizing leadership opportunities, is not happening because of suppression. What are your thoughts, Winnie?
When we talk about it's a bit of a personal feeling, and as much as it's a personal feeling, it is influenced by external factors. Who are your influences? Because if you have people around you who are always going to make you feel like you're not worth it, feel you're never qualified, feel like this position was handed over to you, it was a token, then you start feeling like you have this urge to overprove yourself. And in the process of overproving yourself that you're actually worthy of this, then you can suffer issues like depression, issues like heart attack. And it's proven with evidence that women work more to earn the same as what men work, what men earn. As a woman, I may need to work 12 hours to earn what a man is earning in 4 to 5 hours. Because we've been put in a space where I have to overprove myself. The kind of qualifications I've gained, to some extent, is not enough when I'm being compared to a man. So that puts me in a place of always thinking of what do I need to do extra to prove that I'm actually worthy of this job, that I'm actually worthy of this position, that I'm actually qualified to undertake this position. And then, like I mentioned earlier, it's about the triple role that the woman has. So you're trying to overprove yourself at work. And at the same time, you have other roles that you need to deliver on. So where is the balance? So if that balance is not there, that kind of suppresses what can you actually achieve as a woman here.
Oh, that's quite deep. I wonder what the men in this audience today have to say about that. We've been talking a lot about men, and I'm yet to hear the voice of any of you from the audience. If you don't speak, I will represent you, but I want you to speak. Let me hear your thoughts, questions, and comments. They are very much welcome. Yeah, I can see one hand raised over here. I will allow you to quickly take the microphone and say what you have to say, Dr. Julian. Please unmute your microphone, sir. Your microphone is still muted, Dr. Julian. We are trying to admit Dr. Julian to make his comment or ask the question. I don't know what he has to say, but your microphone is still muted, sir. If you can unmute it, then you will be able to. We will be able to hear you. Yes, go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you so much. Winnie, how are you?
Very well, Doc. How are you?
I'm very well. Nice to talk after a while. The angle I'm going to take is a little academic, and my question or comment will be a little bit rhetorical, and it could just be food for thought. But again, if you have an input to it, that would be very, very nice. My thinking is that the she and the he debate, and especially on leadership, is becoming very, very blurred. And so I've been asking the opinion leaders and the opinion shapers in this space to tell us what makes the concept of women in leadership, what makes the concept of women in leadership different from that of their male counterparts. I hold the view that until that is very clear, so that there is clarity on how we perceive women leadership to look like, maybe contrary to what male leadership looks like, so that we can make comparisons and arrive at deductions that helps us understand the difference, the significant differences, so much so that then we can say these are the gaps. And from these gaps, this is what needs to be done if indeed the woman in leadership is placed at a disadvantage. So I'm just throwing it out there that there may be need for scholars to actually interrogate this question a lot deeper so that they can help us with a bit of scientific data that can be helpful in making us make certain deductions. And especially for those who want to run away with issues of leadership, clearly differentiating what the male and the female differences are and what needs to be done to fix it. That's just a comment I'm throwing out there, and maybe you have thought about it already, Osulah, and it would be nice if you have any reaction to share it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for that, Doc. I'm actually pursuing my PhD now in the area of leadership, and trust me, I've learned a lot of literature, and there's so much literature out there about women's leadership, and I wouldn't say that it's any different from male leadership. The only differences are, a lot of them have been pointed out there. Some of them are emotional differences, where women are said to be pathetic, and that therefore they make better leaders because they listen. There are those that have also been talked about in the area of cognitive issues. And the one that is actually holding people so much back is the social-cultural things that we have around us, how we are socialized, how we are brought up, the kind of belief systems that we're brought up with. But I think for the sake of our discussion today, I think we were looking at what can we do to create these spaces? Because one thing we need to do is to identify, when I started, I said, we need to recognize that there are those leadership disparities. And the disparities I'm talking about for the purpose of this discussion is those disparities we see in the numbers that are represented. And in these numbers that are represented, the women who are there, do they have a voice? Do they speak? Or they're just there because they're women? You can be put in a leadership position to add up the numbers, to fill up the numbers, but not have a say, not make a decision. Yeah, but what you're saying is something that still need to be looked into. I think there's a lot of opportunities to still study leadership, especially on those kind of differences. What is it that a male leadership looks like? What is it that a female leadership looks like beyond the social cultural issues, that you see? Yeah, so I think there's still a lot of opportunity to learn. But again, at the same time, there's a lot of literature out there on, several scholars who've studied leadership here. And like we say, leadership, learning never ends. We learn new things every day.
Yeah, thank you so much. Maybe if it pleases you, maybe we can do a joint article at some point.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so very much, Dr. Julian. And I like the question. Your question is quite deep. I like the angle you are looking at things from. There was another hand raised here from Mika Mitoko. Mika, are you still interested in asking your question? And as I asked Mika about whether or not he's still interested in asking, if there is anybody else who has a question to ask, please raise your hand. We have been here for about 1.5 hours now, and I think we have less than 10 minutes now to bring this whole conversation to a close. As we move towards the end of it, I'll allow Mika to ask his question. Mika.
Hi, yeah, thank you very much for this insight. It's raining where I am, so I hope you hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
I know Winnie for over 10 years, and I've worked with her and many others in the gender space. And my simple advice to anyone is not a question, but more of a comment. Get ourselves into the space, especially as men, get ourselves into the space, because this week I've been training quite a number of women entrepreneurs, and the dynamics is a bit different, especially when you look at the gender and cultural aspects. So as men, we need to look at how do we contort, and I use contort deliberately because when we grow up, and many of us men know that as we grow up, we do not appreciate the fact or the issues that a lot of women face with regards to their development and their ambitions and their vision, etc. So you find a lot of women, even right now, the women even older than me, who self-confidence is kind of low, and I've had to kind of push it from Monday to date and tell them that when I'm talking about a business idea, or rather when I'm pushing you to tell me your business idea, don't lower your volume or your voice, but be confident about it, because God has given you that opportunity. So I felt I need to jump in there, but I think we need to feel, and I don't have a structure with whatever I'm saying, but we need to feel a way, or we need to find a way of how to communicate as both genders as opposed to fighting, and then find a way of just listening to each other at the end of the day. Thank you.
Well, thank you so very much, Mika. Your comment is quite clear, very, very clear. While he was talking, he has just reminded me of one of those other syndromes that I wanted to place on the table and get Winnie to give us her thoughts. I am calling it the permission syndrome. The permission syndrome, whereby a lot of people sit on the sides waiting to be permitted, waiting to be invited, and waiting to be allowed in. And when you talk about creating and maximizing, in my opinion, it feels more of an intentional initiative to start things off. And I like the quote that I had on Monday from Dr. Peggy: nothing changes until something changes. So, Winnie, get me your thoughts about the permission syndrome and how this affects the dynamics of how women get involved in the issues of leadership.
Interesting. So today you have so many syndromes to discuss. Yeah, but I think we live in a space where we are impacted with a lot of syndromes, so to speak. And when we talk about, the permission syndrome, it's about I am not able to make a decision until, someone qualifies me. It's an issue of not being able to speak up for yourself until, someone gives you the backing. And sometimes there are women out here, and even men, who feel that they cannot make a decision until they check it with someone else. And you're in a position of making decisions. So sometimes instead of looking for, someone who can help you make a better decision, you are out there looking for someone who can actually justify your actions.
Yes.
Which means you do not believe in yourself. And I think we see a lot of that among women. And that is why you hear comments like, why is that one behaving like a woman? Why is that man behaving like a woman? He cannot make decisions like a man. Yeah, just because probably you are seeking opinion, and people look at you like, men are not supposed to seek opinion. They're supposed to, know things and speak about them and stand up for that. Yeah, so we see that a lot among women. And again, it takes me back to the same thing. The root causes of these issues. It's all about the social culture fabric that we have. Until those things are addressed, we are social beings. We are guided by our social values. What is my mother going to say when I do this? What is my father going to say? What is my brother, my sister? What are my male colleagues going to say when I make this decision? Look at a scenario where you're the HR director and people are questioning why how will they imagine, will they think that I made the right decision to let go of staff ABCD, who is a man or a woman? People, and in our surroundings, like I talked about our influences, if people keep second guessing you, then you will always have that syndrome of I need to seek permission before I do something.
Mm.
You need to feel justified by somebody before you can actually make a decision. And of course, there are certain times where you're trying to make a collaborative decision, not because you don't know what to do, but you're trying to kind of get a collaborative process in a democracy. I mean, we want to make joint decisions. But if this is different from the permission syndrome, where you feel you have no authority, it's like having a position without a portfolio. And it happens a lot in positions where you are in a position because of your gender, and it was a token. I've interacted with women in management committees, and you find that they are put there because they are either the secretary or the treasurer. And when it comes to decision making, they do not make any decisions on even how the management committee is run. And why do they put them as secretaries? They can take good notes during meetings. They can schedule notes. Meetings. They can keep records and things like that. And then why are they treasurers? They are honest. They are considered honest. They will not use that money without permission. Such kind of issues. So which means that in certain instances, a woman is expected to go back, and this is the expectation and the stereotypes around our cultures. I'm expected to go back and seek permission or seek justification. Excuse me. My throat is misbehaving. Yeah, so those are some of the things that we need to think about when it comes to permission issues.
Right. Thank you so very much for that. I can see a hand being raised here. I will allow Ahsan to ask his question. Ahsan, if you can unmute your microphone. Ahsan? Well, I think we have lost him. Thank you so very much for that. There are several other syndromes that I wanted to ask you about, but I'm not going to ask them because I think we have run out of time. But I'm just going to mention the last one you've talked about is the token syndrome, very close to permission syndrome and all those other syndromes that you've talked about. But it is a syndrome anyway, and they all show in different shapes and colors. We have been talking to Winnie Osulah on the subject creating and maximizing leadership opportunities, especially for women and women in leadership. We've been here for 1.5 hours now, and seems like we
it seems we lost you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think I was having some technical issues here, but can you hear me now?
Loud and clear.
Thank you so very much. So I was just actually bringing this meeting to a close. We've been here for about 1.5 hours now, and I want to bring the meeting to a close. But before I do that, I will seek to know if there is any question from Electin. Have you received any question, Electin, if you can hear me?
Electin is actually not online yet.
Okay, no problem. If she's not online, that's okay. As I was beginning to say, because of the interest of time, I would want to bring this conversation to a close. We've been talking to Winnie Osulah, diversity, equity, and inclusion expert, gender specialist, talking to us about creating and maximizing leadership opportunities. As I said earlier, the conversation is brought to you courtesy of Zion Pearl Publishers in partnership with She Lives Project. She Lives is a project that is being created to make a platform for these kind of conversations, for the woman to be heard and to be visible, and for us to help us at least move the needle in the right direction. I believe that in doing this, we are able to shape the way we think and shape the way we do things, and hopefully shape the terrain and allow for more and more participation for women, so that we can be able to tap into their resourcefulness and the value that they carry within themselves. And as I say this, we are getting ready to launch the second volume of the She Leads project. The project has a goal of building literature from the experiences of women and women leaders, those who have had an opportunity to do leadership in our space. So on the 29th of September, which is this month, at the Trademark Hotel here in Nairobi, that's in the Village Market, we will be launching the second volume. So if you're in Nairobi and can spare time for that, we are welcoming you to join that conversation. We'll have about 20 women leaders sharing different insights from the different experiences that they have had, and helping us to spice up the conversation and move the needle in the right direction. Beyond that, we are putting together one of the biggest women leaders conferences that is coming up in March next year, between the 6th and the 8th of March 2024. We are calling it the She Leads Summit. We will have all these women that we are featuring in these conversations every day, and that have been featured in the different volumes of the She Leads project. So please plan to be part of that amazing meeting that is going to happen. It's going to be 3 days of powerful conversations, networking, and learning from each other. So as I bring this to a close, I want to thank all of you for sparing time and being here. I know it has taken you sacrifice to be here for those 1.5 hours. And importantly, thank our guest, Winnie. I know your throat was not behaving very well today, but look at what you have done. It has been amazing. It has been insightful, and we are all happy. Thank you, everybody who has asked questions and contributed to the conversation. I really appreciate all of you. So from myself and my host, Electin Kunyu, it is a bye for now. Until we meet again next week on Monday, we have another guest coming on board, and then of course on Thursday. Thank you so very much. It's a bye from us. Have yourself a wonderful night, and God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye all.